The job I'll be talking about today has to do with the widespread idea that there are reptilian aliens or lizard people living among us, married to us, and even ruling us. This job was based out of the City of Angels, a city that proved to be much more than that. Many of you have heard about the lizard people's catacomb city. Are you a believer? The job I was on cut through the easy-to-set-aside fantasy that there are walking lizards living underground, an idea that is easy to brush off, or maybe you watch a movie on it, and at the end of the day, most of us take comfort in the fact that it just cannot be real. I was called in to seek out the real answer, and when one woman came to me to solve the mystery for her, no one could have known how it would turn out. They call me the Ghost. I'm ex-CIA and now a dark operative on the dark web. I've worked a lot of jobs, and today is my account of what happened when I was called on by a celebrity looking for the truth. Take a listen and enjoy. This job I'm about to tell you about has to do with a set of beings from one world traveling and coming to occupy another. And the beings I'm talking about today are what most refer to as the lizard people. And I don't love using that term, but it's the one people recognize. Keep listening and you'll find out why there's so much more behind this than giant lizards that live underground. I mean, call it a legend, call it a conspiracy theory, call it whatever you want. Maybe you've never heard of it, but the lizard people do exist, and they're a species that have been trying to infiltrate us for years. But okay, let's get to this request. It came to me one spring, and at that time I was actually looking to take a trip of my own to officially end winter, and I was going to go ice climb the Matanuska Glacier in Alaska. I get this request that comes in though, and immediately my planning gets put on hold. The request said that this woman, who we've all seen on the big screen, by the way, and I can't tell you her name obviously, but let's call her Kara. Anyway, Kara sounds pretty desperate, telling me that she had nowhere else to turn, that she believes her husband, an A-lister, has secrets. Secrets that she is simply not equipped to dig into, and she's afraid that she wouldn't be able to handle the truth if she was left to find it by herself. Her fear? That her husband is of another breed, a reptilian, and part of an elite group that focuses on power and ushering the human race in the direction they want us to go. Well, I agree to meet with Kara, and she gives me a day and a time to meet her on Catalina Island. She obviously didn't want anyone to see her meeting anyone. Catalina is a channel island off Southern California. You've probably heard of it. And requests from California, they tend to be a little out there anyway, and this one's no different. As I'm on the boat over to the island, there's a lot of things going through my mind, There's the possibility that this woman is just crazy. I've seen her movies and the headlines talking about her issues of late with her marriage and life. I don't like to read too much into that stuff, but I'll be honest, some of those stories are based on truth, and the people writing those stories are just writing what they want around it because they don't really have the full story. Well, with this celeb in the news, I'm about to get the full story. So I get over there and I meet her at a small cottage that she's rented. She answers the door and she's nervous. I mean, she's moving pretty fast. She's talking fast. She has papers everywhere. And she's wearing, white capris, a tank top, and a scarf around her neck. So she's nervously moving around, but she looks put together. It's like she walked right out of the 50s with a modern day flair that celebrities seem to have. Me, I'm in all black, like usual. And I look more like I'm about to hop on a sport bike. So already we make quite the pair. Anyway, she's talking and talking while making this batch of margaritas, and she brings out 2 of them. We sit down at the dining room table. Well, no margarita for me, but she pretty much chugs hers. And then she takes the one meant for me, and she starts sipping that. She's calming down and sort of starts over. She introduces herself formally and thanks me for taking the time to meet her. I tell her I'm glad to be there and that I'd like for her to start in the beginning. How did she get this suspicion? And does she have any proof so far that her husband is not all the way human? She tells me that it all started with these meetings that her husband said he was going to. He said he was participating in some actors club, sharing ideas and latest techniques, but after a while, she thought maybe he was having an affair. I mean, he would not miss these meetings. And this was all on top of the religious group he was a part of, that she admits she really wanted nothing to do with, but in the name of love, she agreed to be a part of it. And I'll talk more about that later, but this is her situation. She's not happy, and she's confused, and she's scared. So her husband spends a lot of time away from her, and it was distracting her and hurting her career. Over time, she became obsessed about where he was going and decided to have him followed. Well, he was going to some kind of meeting, but it didn't make all that much sense. When followed on meeting night, he would always go to this one particular restaurant in Hollywood. But when the PI followed him inside, he seemed to have disappeared, like he wouldn't be there. I mean, this guy following him couldn't just walk in with her husband, but even trying to be just a few steps behind him, it was unclear where he actually went when he got inside. But one time, the PI decided to beat her husband there. He knew where he was going, so he would just get there first. And he did, and he waited. And when her husband, and let's just call him A-list, because he's been big time for a while now. So when A-list gets there, he goes to this small room in the back. And the PI sneaks back there, and he sees A-list go through this trap door to who knows where. So now Kara's racking her brain about all of that. When one day, she woke up early, and A-list always got up really early to take a swim in the ocean, and then he'd come back in and shower, like around 5 a.m. And he didn't know that she was up, and when she crept up by the bathroom to see what he was doing, she saw something that she just couldn't explain, and it frightened her. He was standing there in the shower, and through the glass, she saw him change. If he puts his face to the shower, it changed. When he turned his back and put that to the water, it changed. His skin, that he went to great lengths to care for, turned to that of scales, and she saw a mix of greens and yellows. And she was horrified. She met her friends for coffee breaks and drinks many times after that and would try to see if they knew anything like this or have experienced something similar. Not by asking them directly, she would work it into the conversation, through jokes or, hey, did you see that story? That kind of thing. And after putting together some of the feedback she got, she landed on the lizard people. And so she started looking into that herself. That was the only explanation she could find, and she had seen it for her own eyes. Starting to go crazy, she put her feelers out in the elite Hollywood community and found me. She didn't even know where to begin. She wanted to get to the bottom of this, but was afraid to. I mean, what would her marriage mean? Her career? The world, for that matter? I mean, like I always say, I always have to have an extremely open mind for this job. And I have a curiosity that some people might not be able to handle. This job would be to find out who or what her husband really is and what he's a part of. Well, I agree to take this job. So I get more details about A-list and their lives, and I call on Jagger and Scarlett to join me in California. And I actually have a space in LA, and that's what we're going to use for our base. It's a working office, so we can work there, eat there, shower, sleep, everything. So my team gets in, and we start to organize some of the stuff that I had them bring. We need surveillance equipment, tracking GPS for both Kara and A-list cars, my tools for breaking and entering. We always need those types of things when we're dealing with information that's seriously kept secret, like what's happening here. Different papers and scripts and notes to help us get in on the inside if we need them. Different things like that. And of course, I have all my computer equipment because for this, I will definitely need to be in all places I can. It's not like anything that we're talking about here is going to be easy to find or prove. So we get set up, and then the next day is when we really start. A-list meets his little group of whatever it is every Thursday night. And it's Thursday. So I find him and I start following him around. He just got done filming a movie that's part of a big franchise, and he's still meeting at the studio. So he's been going to Paramount every morning after his, swim shower routine. So I follow him there. And knowing this before my team travels, Jagger was able to create some passes for us to be on the inside of the lot. So not only do we follow him to the lot, we follow him in. And the day, part of the day he was there, didn't really send up any alarms until he meets with 3 other well-knowns, and one of them hands him this blue packet. And after that all happens, A-list leaves. He just gets his packet, and then he takes off and heads home. And there was something weird about that handoff. Who knows? It could be just another script, but I want to find out. So I get a hold of Kara, and I tell her that I know he's coming home with it, and to snoop it out if she can. Well, she does even better than that. Because A-list gets home, and it turns out he's going golfing the rest of the day. And I mean, he's not thinking that Kara has anything to be suspicious about, so he leaves that packet in the trunk of his car. Perfect. So he leaves, and I'm standing by to get in there as soon as he does. And Kara's able to get the packet so that we can look it over for ourselves. She buzzes me in to their very secure and gated home, and we check it out. She's already started reading it when I get in, and she just has this look of horror on her face. She sees me, and she just hands it to me, so I sit down and I read it all over. And this packet laid out the topic for their next meeting. It reviews the plan. It kind of looked like a business document, really, with stats and reviews of how well a company would be doing or something, but it isn't about a company. This packet is about the melting of one species into another, and I'm talking about them into us. It goes over the numbers, and I can see that the result of all the computing of what they call their community shows us that they are behind in their original goals. And they check on this every year. Watching the numbers more closely became a thing in the early 80s. You know, back then, things seemed to be moving really quickly. It seemed to be going really well. And the people were so busy, you know, just being in the 80s that they didn't even notice what was happening. And then on the other side of things, the Reptilian nation thought they were just going to shoot to the top, that the flip would happen soon and that they were set to become the dominant race any minute. Their Hollywood members even put out that TV series, V, to help prepare the humans for the big lizard takeover. But they would come to find that they were way behind back then. They were nowhere near ready. And that's when the long-term plan came for the merge was put together. And here we are today, and they're still working towards that goal. This packet I was reading explained that it was time for a spike. They needed a boost, and they were all encouraged to keep mating and procreating with the humans. I mean, this thing was incredible. Was this a joke? Unfortunately not. So I had Jagger place himself at that restaurant bar that Alice would be going to that night. I placed Scarlett on the inside of the life of Alice and Kara. She would be staying with them in their home. And Kara would explain that by saying that she was undergoing intense acting instruction and that Scarlett was sent from New York to help Kara brush up on her skills for Broadway. That was something she actually did want to explore. It all made sense, and Alice thought nothing of it, so we were right where we needed to be. That night, I follow Alice to the restaurant. Nothing exciting. I didn't really learn anything on that trip. You know, Jagger's on the inside, and basing his position off where the PI said the action was, he waits. And sure enough, he sees Alice go into the floor. Again, nothing exciting though, because we're blind, and that's not going to work. I go inside and sit with Jagger, and we figure out a plan. This restaurant, this place, shuts down at 10 p.m. So we need to either be on the inside when that happens or find a way to get inside after 10. Well, there's no good place to hide in there, so we don't really have a choice, and we're going to have to break in. We watch closely as they lock everything up and turn on the alarm system. I was actually hoping they wouldn't have an alarm or the cameras they have out front, but they do. So it just means that we're going to have a small delay getting in the inside. But I break out my bag from the trunk of my vehicle, and using my wireless hack system, I sync up with their alarm. And instead of turning it off, which would leave a record, I reprogram it to bypass the notifications for any sort of movement or break-in. And then I go into the cameras and take over. And that one's easy enough. I fill it with a looping video of the last 15 minutes, and that'll take care of that just fine. And then we're in. We know exactly where to go. And in that back room, we find extra stacks of cases of beer and liquor. And there's a food fridge and freezer off to the side. For someone that would have no idea what's really in there, it does just look like a basic stockroom area. And it functions as one. But we know better. And we pull the heavyweight rubber mat to the side, and underneath it is the door. So we're staring at this door, and we have no idea what's beyond it. But we have to go in. We place a camera to monitor anything that happens on one of the shelves that holds the canned goods and things, and it's set to record for the next 24 hours. We, of course, shouldn't be gone that long. We also leave the back door of the restaurant unlocked so that we can make a quick exit if we need to. And that's it. I have a pack of supplies, and we lift up that door. And I don't know if we expected, a huge group of reptiles to be down there ready to shoot us down or something, but there was nothing. We can't see anything. It's dark. But we do see a staircase, so we make our way down. And it's dark, so we break out our small flashlights. And we get down, it's just one level, and we're in a room, but there's nothing there. We don't see anything. But then Jagger spots it. One of the walls is slightly off, and sure enough, it's a fake wall that someone didn't close all the way. And we open it, and it opens to this big circular room. And we're able to flip on the lights in there, and it's actually pretty cool. I mean, there's nothing in there, but all the lights hang from these crazy cords, and the effect was really cool. But what we also see is a couple symbols on the floor. There's the famous S with two triangles, the S being, a serpent of knowledge, a symbol of Satan, and the S and the triangles are the symbol of Scientology. And above that is an etched-in reptilian head. And this throws us off at first. I mean, Scientology is all over the place out there in Cali, but what does that have to do with all this lizard stuff? We just add it to the list of things we need to find out. We don't want to spend a ton of time down there in this place, so we keep moving forward. The options in front of us are 8 doors. They line the walls of this room. So we start with one and we go in, and it leads down this long hallway, and when we head down it, we see it breaks off into different places. It's like an underground maze. And we go back, and one by one we're going through these doors, and we're finding more and more hallways that break off into who knows where. The 7th door we open is different though. There's another small staircase leading down. And then you walk through what looks like just an entranceway. And beyond that, there's a really large room. And it looks sort of like a medieval conference hall or something. It's made of stone and like a sandstone material. It's like Indiana Jones stuff. There are big lights above and benches and chairs and this large cement table up in the front. And behind that is a podium. And behind that are 2 sets of stacked stone benches. And they're on either side of the podium, like a church choir might be. And all around this big room, on the walls, you see statues that line the walls every few feet. And they're of human bodies and reptilian heads, men and women. I walk up to that big table, and I see something's on it. And looking closer, I see that there are red drip marks running down the sides of this thing. And I know instantly this is blood. I mean, this table's been cleaned, that's obvious. But these drips are soaked in from something that's happened more than once. We don't know what that's all about, but we keep going. We go up to the podium, and on the backside of that, there are shelves behind some glass, but it's locked. Well, I want in, and it only takes a couple of minutes for me to get in. And I find 3 large books and some kind of necklace, and I pick it up, and it's made of some heavy, dark gold, and it has jewels that line the chain, and then this piece that hangs down that looks like it's made from processed moonstone. You can see through it, and inside of it, there's a line of scales, almost like you'd see on a sheet of scaled skin. But there's no skin, it's just these scales like carefully placed in each location. These scales are from something, or maybe someone. But what does any of this mean? Well, we don't know, but we're going to keep digging until we find out. Okay, well, we decide that we've been underground long enough and we don't want to chance it. We can always come back. So we get photos of everything we see and get out of the underground. We get our video surveillance equipment off the shelf in the stockroom, put everything back, and head out. Back at our base, we're set up to connect to our system back home, which is great because, these items are not exactly something you're just going to find on Google. I have to dig deeper into all of it. I set up a sweep to run over the dark web, and I also hack into all of A-List's devices. Harley, who's helping me from our home office, will watch what it finds. I also send her all the pictures of what we saw, and she will dig for anything she can on those items in that crazy room. And we also catch up with Kara, who tells us that after A-List's last meeting, he came home with a bottle of wine, told her how much he loved her, and all of that led to a conversation about he wanted to expand their family. At that point, they only had their one daughter. Kara had sent her to stay with family while we were there conducting our investigation, and she told A-List they were thinking of joining Scientology and that sending their daughter there would help. That's the only way she got away with that. But Kara went along with all of this, but really deep inside she was disgusted. It just followed the plan for the merge. They were to procreate, and he was just trying to help the cause. And she can play along and put that stuff off while we monitor the information collected from A-List and make a plan to be at that next Thursday night meeting. I haven't seen any proof of this reptilian nation yet for myself. And to do the job right, I can't just rely on what this upset wife is saying. She wants proof, and that's what I'm here to get for her too. Unfortunately for me, that means this job is going to take longer than a few days, but I have to stay and see this thing through. So monitoring A-list devices, we learned that the next meeting is a big one. They're calling it an elevation ceremony. And certain members of the community were to be elevated to a more advanced level, and A-list was one of them. So it's a ceremony or celebration for those that are rising up the ranks. And now, we can't stop the reptilian nation altogether, but we can attempt to collect enough evidence to provide the proof to Kara. That's the job. And I'm not sure yet what the elevation ceremony altogether does, but we are going to do our best to make sure that A-list returns home in one piece. And to do this, we need to be in this meeting so we can see what takes place. With what we've found so far, I tend to believe that there is something going on with all of this. I'm just not sure what it all means yet. For Kara, she only had the one sighting of A-list's reveal in that shower that day. And now, she's leaving the investigating to us so that he doesn't catch on to her trying to catch him. She didn't really watch him to the point of being obvious, but she was trying to catch him in the shower again or see if anything happens any other time he wasn't near water. But she hasn't seen that change in him since. She doesn't want to believe it, but she can't really go on with normal life either. Maybe what she saw wasn't real. Maybe she was half asleep and didn't know what she saw. The doubt was too much, and it would be very easy for her to give into it, but she wanted the final word, the truth, so that she could go on with her life, with him or without him. And this next meeting would hopefully give us what we were looking for. All right, in preparation of that meeting, we start to sift through what information my system has collected so far. From A-list communications and things, we find his invitation to this ceremony. And it says that he will rise to a new level and be bonded and blended. And we don't know what any of that means. We also learn that he will be given a ring as a symbol of his new rank, only to be worn in these meetings or if he's in a desperate time of need. And if he goes through with this and accepts this ring, with that comes a new level of commitment, a more serious commitment for A-list. We also see the guest list, and this is a treasure trove of information for people wanting to know. And I would love to put this thing out there, but any direct transfer of information on jobs like this from me to you crosses a line that I will not risk my livelihood to do. You guys always ask, why can I tell you things? And I've explained that, but when it gets to a certain level with regards to intel, like names of people and things like that, that's a great example of what I will not do. But I can say, go ahead and think of maybe a past president. Think about all the great actors that you love, and then think about them again. And this list I saw was only the people that are going to the ceremony. I'd love to see a list of who all is in this little club, but I didn't get that this time. Okay, well, we also learned that those that are elevated are most definitely connected to the Scientology religion. And it's not until I talk to Harley again that I find out more about what Scientology even has to do with any of this. And I find out it's the cover for all of it. We also learn that A-list his life is sort of planned out for him, and he's on the track of 3 children, meaning 3 children are expected of him, and they only will count if they are brought up on the inside. They will be hybrids, of course, and their lives, their purpose, should only be set to the goals of the community. His wife is disposable, basically an extension of himself to help him accomplish certain things. And I'm not talking about it in the way of traditional marriage says. It's more that the wife of a man like this is there to serve his needs, help him look normal, even more successful, or more of someone to envy. She needs to be in a high-powered position in society, which Kara is, and will be willing to leave anything in her old life behind and fully pledge herself to be devoted to the community. And then this is what I meant in the beginning of this vlog. Kara went along with him in this religion because she loved him. But all of that was wearing on her too. She wasn't supposed to talk to her parents much, and she couldn't talk to anyone else really unless it was for the purpose of her career. And speaking of that, before this next meeting happens, we also check in with Scarlett. She's a pretty good spy, and it's amazing the stuff she can find out about somebody right under their nose. So she finds out that when A-list goes for his swim in the morning, something is happening. She says it's hard to see though, but he definitely changed while he was in that water. She could see his reflection in the moonlight, and like Kara, saw a hint of green and yellow. Other things about him were that he loved his telescope, and he looked through it every day without fail before his dip in the ocean each morning. Not really sure what he was looking for there. She also saw something that even she had a hard time believing. But one of the days that Kara was rushing home, she parked a little crooked in their driveway, and Scarlett swears that she saw A-List walk by it after he got home, and then he went back to it, picked up the back end just enough, and moved it to straighten it out. So he has extra strength, it would seem. He didn't drink, smoke, or use foul language. He'd hear things coming from outside that neither Cora or Scarlett heard. He'd even get up from the couch or wherever he was to try to find out what it was out the window. And Scarlett said that if he looked right at you, a chill would run down your spine. I mean, perfect if you're a giddy fan, because, you just think that that's why that was happening. But Scarlett isn't a fan, and she says that's not what's happening. She believes he's emitting some kind of piercing energy. So that tells us a little bit about him in the everyday. I then work with Harley back home, and we work on those scans over the dark web to find out what we can. We discover that Scientology as a whole is bringing in people so they can build up their reptilian nation. No, they can't change a human into a lizard, but they can warp their minds and get them in line, take their money, show them the way, and make it as impossible as they can for anyone to leave. And it was also very interesting to find out that there are other cults, in our country and others, that are a part of all of this. To the outside, it would look like they're completely separate from Scientology, and certainly not lizards, right? But more of them are connected than you probably want to know. These other cults would be as if, a company had a field office. They're run a little bit differently, less money goes through them. Their main purpose, though, is to wipe the minds of the people that join and then use them to breed as much as they can. So they're basically hybrid breeding farms that are run and governed by the offices of Scientology, which is really the headquarters for the reptilian nation above ground. They have a pretty good reach with this setup. I mean, if you can't afford Scientology or you don't want to join that, they have many other options and ways they can still get to you. So if you start to get down in your life and you become vulnerable, you could become one of their targets. And then because your thinking is skewed, you would never realize what's happening. I mean, think about it. And hey, some of you might be part of some of these groups, and I'm not saying that all groups are connected to this. But a lot of you have, watched the shows about these types of groups that they refer to as cults. And some of you find yourself asking questions, didn't these people know what was happening? Or how could they fall for this? And you're saying to yourself that you would totally know it was a scam, right? But some of this ties into what Scarlett said. They do emit an energy. And if you come to them vulnerable, you're actually more open to receive that energy. And that's when it starts. The ushering of the people to where they want them to go. So you can see that there's a lot to this, and we could go on learning more and more things that would without a doubt be shocking. But our job is for Kara. We can't get too far away from our real goal here, but to understand all of this helps us know what we're dealing with. Okay, well then we come upon meeting day. So early that Thursday morning, and I mean really early, like 2 a.m, we sneak back into that restaurant and we have supplies. In that big meeting or presentation room conference hall, we set up little canisters that are ready to be set off if we need them. Once they set off, they will blow out tear gas throughout that room or chamber, and it will force the ceremony to end and everyone out. And we're not going to use this unless we have to, but if anything crazy goes down with A-List, we will do what we have to do. If I get proof that A-List is some sort of reptile or lizard or whatever, I want to make sure he goes back home in a shape that Kara can actually deal with. Jagger and I also set up another surveillance camera at the entrance of that room. And this thing is great. Things can be really far away, but it is far-reaching, and it can get very clear video, even if the light's not optimum. We will record what we can and bring what we get to Kara. If anything goes on that we think will change A-List in any way, more than he already is, we will do what we can to sabotage the ceremony. So we get all set up, but now, we can't leave, right? The meeting is that night, and as soon as someone gets there that morning, they will be watching over that door very closely to the underground. So we have food and water, and we don't have another choice. We have to sit there and wait. And you're probably wondering, won't someone see us when they get in there? Well, we're hoping not. And when you walk down the stone steps to this large room, there is a space underneath it. And on each side of it, there are these metal grates that are dark and they're decorated with more jewels and little reptilian heads. And we blowtorch around the one that's on the right side if you're walking down. And we're able to pull it free. And there's a space under there. And we can temporarily stick that back in place. I mean, we don't sit in there all day. That would make us crazy. But we keep an eye on the hallway. And if anyone's starting to come down, we're ready to dive in. And the day's a long one, I'll admit. And this does happen every so often on a job. There can be a lot of action, or you can just be sitting like this for quite a while, or working on the most tedious thing that can take hours. But that's just how it goes. Later into the evening, we do start to hear people coming, and it's about an hour before A-list usually shows up. The people that come in start to go over a list, and I'm assuming it's the list of those that are being elevated because A-list is on it. They go over who will do what, and there's some small talk and some laughter too, and then more people show up. And I see that one of them has a chalice. So they also break out some of the things that they have stowed away from under the podium. They take out the books, and one of them puts on the necklace. They lay a cloth down on this big stone table, and they put this chalice on it. And one of the men that arrived later also brought a wooden box. And the guy with the necklace opens it, and it seems to us that that box is full of the rings. Necklace guy sets it down on the cloth on that stone table next to the chalice, and eventually other people start to show up. And that list that I saw earlier was no joke. There are people all of us would recognize at this meeting, or ceremony rather. And then, like he always does, on time, A-list shows up. He and a few of the others are put in the seats near the front. And then the ceremony starts to come together. There are two groups of people that start to sit in those stacked benches behind the podium, and this is where things really started to get weird. As these people take their seats on those benches, they turn. They turn from being the people we recognize into creatures I've never seen before. They have scales. I'm seeing blues and greens and oranges and yellows. And their faces actually take on a new shape, as do their bodies, but slightly. The guy with the necklace calls 6 people up to the front, and he takes a position on the far side of that big stone table with the chalice on it, and then 3 of the guys go on one side and 3 go on the other side, and he gives them a knife, and they slice through their arms, and they stand there taking turns, letting their blood drip into this chalice, while the main guy says all this ritual stuff that none of us would really understand. And when the chalice is full, to his liking, each of the 6 men get towels and they take to their seats. The next part of what the main guy says is stuff we can actually understand. And it's clear that once a member drinks from that chalice, they get their ring, but it also means that they're changed forever. The guys that have contributed blood to this chalice are already elevated. By someone drinking this, like A-list, they will then be blended with them. With their new powers that will get transferred to them, the reptilian in them becomes stronger. If they ever wanted to try to live their lives like a human, and they wanted to go that direction, after this they would no longer and never again have that chance. They would no longer be able to keep their reptilian at bay for any real length of time. Well, we could not let A-list drink from this chalice. That was clear. Or get this ring. Or complete the ritual of this ceremony. It just couldn't happen. We can only control, what's happening while we're there. And once we leave, he could just go ahead and do this another day or another week. But for now, we do have control. And we're here for Kara to give her some time. It's a quick decision to set off those canisters. And as Necklace Guy goes on with some more of his preaching, we get out from under the staircase, put the grate back, and pull our camera down. We send a message to Scarlett, who's standing by to drive us and meet us out back. And then we set off the tear gas and we head up. And when we get to the top and pop back out the door of the floor, we do catch the guy on guard by surprise. And, but we're all in black. There's no way he can see who we are. Even our faces are covered with cloth. We have oxygen masks on. He's surprised. But right behind us is a puff of tear gas, and that gets his attention. And people are going to start rushing out of there any second. So before he has time to think, we break out of the back door and get into the car with Scarlett and drive away. We don't go back to Kara's house, and instead she's waiting for us in an out-of-the-way motel. Scarlett pulled all of our equipment from the house when she left there, and we set some of it up inside this motel and show Kara the video. I mean, it's right there for her to see. And she has Jagger and I's word that what we saw was real, and we saw it for ourselves. The Reptilian nation is alive and well and real and working to spread across our nation and the world. I mean, Kara's glad and grateful that we were able to stop that ceremony, but she knows, just as we do, that this really isn't the end of anything. It just buys her some time to figure out what she wants to do. Her religion that she's in with her husband isn't a religion at all, and her husband isn't who she thinks he is at all. I mean, he's not what anyone thought he was or thinks he is. He has a great cover, though, because he's in movies and he hides right in front of our faces, as so many of them do. I mean, if I were some crazy researcher who wanted to study this stuff, I could have gone on with this for years. But doing the research we did, by doing that, we were able to get what Kara needed. And by Carly and I digging for more, we were able to confirm that the Reptilian nation is already being watched. Although they're working their way into some of our high-powered positions, and they really are a threat to man, very important people are trying to maintain our status quo and work on a plan so that humans remain the dominant life form. And if you've listened to my Roswell episodes, or if you're getting into those stories at all, you know about Phoenix. Phoenix is well aware of the Reptilian nation. They came down to our planet as an escape from dangers they were facing. Finding us, the challenge of power set in. And this all happened a long time ago, before anything with Phoenix or Roswell even happened. From what I can tell, Earth is, to the Reptilian nation, a place to play, a place to rule. And the game or goal is to win. And by taking over and infiltrating powerful and admirable positions, they've gained our support, and we've willingly given it, without us even realizing what was going on. See what I mean? Looking into something like this could go on forever. But for me and my team, the job for Kara was technically done. We provided the proof. Filming the ceremony, watching A-List, and looking into things, it was now up to her what to do. And after this was all done, I did see, because, some headlines you just can't miss, Kara and A-List were soon in a big divorce that was all over social media and everywhere else. Kara took their daughter and did go to New York and started some great work there. She knew as well as I knew that this species, this invading community, is not something that can be fixed or eliminated in a day. And we must go on living and doing what we do so that we as humans remain powerful too. And that's what she was doing. And that was my job. Discovering the Reptilian nation, the lizard people everyone's talking about. A little unsettling in the end, disturbing. But there are people fighting for us, while they continue to work against us. And only time will tell what happens here, if it ever gets to the surface. The job I'll be talking about today took me back to where stars are born, good old Los Angeles. After helping a woman and her daughter escape a near reptilian transformation, my job on that was done, but her connection to it all was not. As rumors flew and more facts were found about lizards and the Big Blue Church, and her suddenly splitting from the scene, she was contacted by those on our side looking for any information on these lizard people and their intentions. She gave them what she could, but then referred them to me to help stop a major event set to be carried out against the human race. They call me the Ghost. I'm ex-CIA and now a dark operative on the dark web. I've worked a lot of jobs, and today is my account of what happened as the story continues on one outside nation set to take over our world. Take a listen and enjoy. Okay, so just a quick note that if you haven't listened to my vlog on lizard people from Reptilian Nation, you might want to listen to that first to get some background information on what happened here. But okay, on to this request. So I get contacted by someone who is a part of what we would call the elite. And I didn't even need to get too far into this thing before I know that they're who they say they are. On top of a few other things, they have my code. It's the one that only those who are, beyond verifiable have and who are part of a high-powered network of mine. The request tells me that he's been in touch with Kara. And Kara's from that job, the vlog, Lizard People from Reptilian Nation. And her situation was, a big deal. She's an actor, but her situation caused her to leave her husband, leave Hollywood, change her career a bit, and relocate both her and her daughter. And that's what this is about. Those lizard people, as they're commonly called. The ones that live here with us. I know there are, a lot of fun conspiracies out there and stories, and it's fun to take part in those fantasies, but I'm talking about real stuff that's changing lives. Kara's dilemma was serious and heartbreaking and scary. Realizing her husband, a Scientologist, was more than he shared he was, that his religion was really a cover for these reptilians looking to take over what we are. For them it was perfect. They're powerful. She wanted out. But she wasn't and isn't the only one being affected here. This is somewhat of a game to them, those of the Reptilian Nation. They came here to escape dangers, but finding us wanted the challenge of taking this place over. I'm happy to say that we've definitely given them a challenge back, but it only proved to motivate them further, for them to up their game. And the man contacting me wants to talk to me about their game and what that means for all of us. What all has to be done and what he'd like from me. The request is serious, and I absolutely tell him, I will meet. And he has me meet him at his oceanfront house out east. It's private for both of us to discuss the issues at hand. And I get out there. This place isn't too big. It's covered in, that classic, cedar shingles, white trim and shutters. It's a nice place. And he welcomes me in. We get our introductions out of the way. And then he asks me if I'll join him on a walk. So boots off, roll up my pants, and off we go. Down to the sand, out back. There's no one around. There's a small breeze. It's nice. And he starts telling me how this is the place he goes, to get away from it all the noise, the issues, and the hassle of what's going on in our world. A man like this, who I'll call Thatcher, sees more than the average Joe on any given day, more than he would even like to. It's hard to enjoy life a lot of the time, when you're constantly keeping an eye on threats, trying to stop or make things happen. You see the world a lot differently when you're a guy like Thatcher. It kind of, reminds me of knowing what all goes on behind the scenes in a movie that you just love. And then you find out, that the set isn't real and the outside was really the inside and your favorite character was really only in the dang thing for a total of 8 minutes. It's better when it's all packed up and put together for your enjoyment, for you to receive and perceive it the way it was meant to be seen. To know what all happened behind the scenes to make it all happen just for you, just might ruin your experience. Life is really not that different. Going about your day with all your props and characters, you don't even bother thinking how it all got put together. Okay, well, we are walking down by the beach, and I ask Thatcher how he found Kara and now me. And he says he's going to be blunt about the whole thing, and he is. He tells me that, it's no secret between us what's going on in California and the world, really. The Reptilian Nation and their plans and tactics to take over the world. They've infiltrated our everydays, our families. They're in the cults of today. They're on the big screens and in high offices. But that we have done our best to meet and beat them at their game. But they're spreading and they're on the move. And when word got out about Kara and her husband, they were already keeping their eyes out for anything big coming out of this camp. The guy shot up to the top in Scientology and the movies. He was well-liked, energetic, and pumped up about the support he had from his religion. But a little too pumped up. He gave himself away. When Kara left, they knew that something had happened, and they wanted to follow up with her and find out what went down and what she knew. Follow up with her like they would anyone else that they suspected had inside knowledge about this stuff. And she told them all about what happened and that she had help. It didn't take them long to pin down who I was and how to get a hold of me. Thatcher tells me that the Lizard Nation has been hard to crack, and the fact that we got into one of their major spots, hidden right in front of us all, back when we did that other job, he says it was impressive. and they needed impressive right now. And Kara shared with him, that I was very intrigued by this whole thing. These lizard people are not only all around us, they're not at all what they seem. I mean, if you've ever met anyone, read about anyone, or even seen them as a character on TV, anyone with a hidden agenda, they can put on the best face ever. It's all a game to them, or a means to an end. And those who are a part of this reptilian nation, they know why they're here. That's all they care about. They don't care how they come across to you. They'll fill whatever role they need to fill. Thatcher explains to me that the nation was still struggling with their numbers. We learned last time that they weren't taking us over as fast as they had hoped. If you listen to my job with Carrie, you know that they thought they would be ahead of where they found themselves at that time, with regards to being ready and fully prepared and populated to take over Earth, become the dominant race. This is their goal. But since we busted up their ceremony and then with Kara leaving, it shook things up a bit. And the leaders, or shall we say the reptilian elite, were not exactly thrilled. And now they're coming back to check on things. Their top guys want to know how far along everything is exactly. Are things still under control? Things like that. They know, Thatcher and group, that the nation is planning something big. But what is it exactly? They're not sure. But he says what we can count on here is that they aren't coming empty-handed. We can only assume that they're either coming with new ideas, maybe some new types of defenses or ways to spread their reptilian. If they come, they're going to want to have an impact, and we need to be ready. And so where to begin? What does he know so far? Well, they know that they've been preparing things at the Big Blue in Los Angeles, and that there are smaller meetings that have been going on and getting a little bigger around California as of late. So it seems like they're all getting ready. Now, we already know what's been going on with the A-list, and the focus here would be the guys at the top of the whole Scientology project. And again, if you haven't listened to the other vlog, you want to get the gist of what was going on with A-list, take a listen to that. Anyway, Thatcher and his guys have barely seen those leaders over in the Scientology buildings the last few weeks. And when they have seen them, they've been in sunglasses. I mean, we're talking day or night. And that seems a little strange. And then there are extra packages and items that are being delivered to the Celebrity Center. Something is up. And Thatcher wants me to find out what it is and stop anything big or major from moving forward. Of course, he has resources, but he explains to me, that his concentration, other than this, lately, has been to track down and then track the nation members that are trying to work their way to the tops of big business and our government. The group was growing and they were getting more aggressive. So he needed this help. And Kara was right. I am very intrigued by this whole thing, and I do accept this job. The thing with the reptilians, or lizard people, again, as they're commonly called, is that they're very good at what they do. So they can be invisible to us, sneaky, one step ahead of us. They're always planning. But at the same time, we've put up a good fight so far, and this whole job would be a part of that, part of the fight, part of us being prepared. Thatcher and I have made it now, a good ways down the beach by now, and we turn around, we're talking about a few more things and expanding on all of this on our way back. And then, it's time for me to go. We have a small plan. I will get my team out to LA so that we can get a feel for what's going on. And he will check in with us in a few days while he does his thing to see what we know by then and what our next plan is going from there. So with that, I'm off, and I'm heading straight for Los Angeles. I don't need to go home first. My team is on their way, and I bring Jagger and Scarlett in again on this one since we worked together great on that last lizard job. Then I also bring in Frankie, just because. And I set us up in this pretty cool apartment there. Brick walls, wooden floors, very open. A perfect place for us to spread out and get to work. And the first thing that we all do is review the last trip to California for this. And then what I know so far here. We review the tunnel map, or the latest one they seem to have anyway, that Thatcher gave me. And we will trail the top guys in the church, the ones who seem to really be into wearing their sunglasses at night these days, and find out where they're all disappearing to. And, I have to have access to inside information. The reptilian nation is all around us, but I want in. And the most obvious place is Scientology, because so much of what the reptilians are doing revolves around that. Remember, it's their cover. And it's perfect for this because Scientology is like a vacuum, sucking up as much as it can. It's perfect, really. But they have eyes everywhere and they watch everything so closely, so this could be tough to try to get to the inside. We start our stakeout of the big blue building, and we start that very early the next morning. I've got Jagger out front, Frankie's out back, I'm covering parking, and we're there for a long time. We got there at 5 in the morning, so, we could beat anyone coming in, be hidden very well, but, now it's like 10:30 in the morning. We hadn't seen anyone significant. A lot of people, but not any of the people we're looking for. But then I see a car around 11:30 in the morning. It's all tinted. The license plate is framed in gold, and the Scientology symbol is at the top of it in the center. I have not seen one of those go by, so I let the guys know that it's coming out, and Frankie catches it and starts to follow it. Jagger and I stay back because, we don't want to add to the tale on whoever this is. We don't want to get noticed. While we've been there and doing our thing at the building, Scarlett made her way over to the Celebrity Center. So now, the night before, I was able to call on a local contact of mine that can pretty much get any ID from just about anywhere. Kind of scary. But anyway, he was able to get Scarlett set up with an employee badge for the Celebrity Center. This is where all those packages have been going. And this is, not one they like to give out. Even though they're making IDs all over the place, they don't even love giving this one out. Because, the people on the inside of Scientology, they're known to be pretty fierce. And I say that out of respect, actually. I mean, like or don't like the religion or what they're doing, either way, they run a very tight and secure ship that's admirable. They're very good at what they do with that. And, when we picked up the ID and the information, my contact even gave me and tried for one last warning on this one. It's not really a good idea to mess around with this place. And it really isn't, but we were desperate. We needed an in. And this is going to help us get there. Anyway, we got what we needed. We knew that the day help or day shift started at about 7 over there. So she went straight over there and walked in with the group of the other people starting at that time. And the only updates I've gotten from her throughout the morning just said that everything was good. So our plan is to leave her be and check in with her when her shift is done. Now Jagger, the blue building, spots another hopeful, leaving the building late that afternoon. So I join him and we both take off after that car. We can't see inside because, again, it's all tinted, although we can see the driver and he just looks like your typical driver in black and white and settled behind the wheel. And we end up at the El Cadiz apartments. They're just north of Melrose and south of Hollywood Hills, just so you kind of get an idea of where we are. And they're owned by Scientology. And the church leader, the head guy, gets out. He's in sunglasses, of course, but, it's daytime. I'm not all that crazy about the fact that he's wearing sunglasses right at that moment, even though Thatcher told me to look out for that. But he goes into the building. Seems like the rumors are true that he might have a place there. But anyway, he goes in and we stick around. And it was good we did because he leaves just a few hours later. And now, it's getting a little darker now. The stakeout is taking our whole day. And he has his sunglasses on when he comes out. So at this point, I am getting a little more interested in the fact that he's wearing his sunglasses still, because at this time of day, you really wouldn't need them. So I note that. And he gets back in his car and goes back into LA to another apartment complex. These top guys are never really seen out and about anywhere anyone else goes. He's just moving about these different Scientology buildings. He never actually stops anywhere where the public is. But anyway, this is a complex that he himself bought so that he had a place to stay, right in LA there. He paid $4.6 million actually for that little gem. Anyway, he gets out and it's really quiet. It's his place. There's no one around. He doesn't get out right away though. And Jagger and I stop and we park and we sort of sneak our way over to where he is. And when he does get out, he's still wearing those sunglasses. So now that's getting a little more important to me. But he starts to slip them off and he looks at the camera that's outside the door. And when he looks up, There's also a light right there, and the light comes on. It must be on some kind of motion sensor for when it gets dark. But anyway, it comes on and hits him in the face. And I mean, he's looking right at it. He's quick also to put his sunglasses back on. But for that small second, both Jagger and I see the light on him. And what we're seeing are shimmery oranges and greens all under his eyes and around the sides by his temple. We only get a quick look. That's all we get. But we definitely saw it. And it's right then that we're looking at all of that I get a message from Scarlett. She's out from her little job that day, and she's looking for us. So I leave Jagger with the church leader in the car, and I head off down the road a ways, and Scarlett comes and meets me to get me. Her and I will head back to our own little rental and review what all she found that day. And Jagger, he'll stay back and see if he catches anything else. His plan is to be there until he does see something else, but of course, we don't know what's all going to happen inside. Scarlett is overly excited to see me and tell me about what all she's learned that day. So her and I stop by a market, and she picks up all this great stuff. And while she gets more of her energy out while cooking, she's making us some awesome Chinese stir fry. She tells me about her day. So her badge that they made for her, my contacts, put her on a level of someone who's already passed certain levels of security. She has a certain level of authority and can be trusted to a certain degree. After all, when she got to work and figured out where she should go, and Scarlett's very smooth at working her orchestrating on getting where she needs to get, but they actually call on her to help with a meeting that's going on that day as one of, her duties. Nothing big, make sure waters were full, there's fresh coffee and snacks, all their special food, of course, and things like that. Now, she wasn't in there the whole time, but when she changed out one of their snack trays on their little side table, she attached a small bug to it. So not only could she hear what was going on in her earpiece, it links to our system. So we had the entire meeting recorded. When I pull it up on the computer, it was just there waiting for us. So while we eat, we sit down and we listen to what this meeting was all about. Now, it was a 4-hour meeting full of real things going on. It was great. But I'll just give you guys some of the key points that have to do with what we care about here. We find out there are 12 members that will be coming to check on what's been going on down here. And they're hoping that they can move things along. Apparently, there will also be at least 3 top celebrities that are very involved in the church and the reptilian movement that are going to partake in this affair that's coming up. The big one, the reptilian elite, are to arrive in just a few days. Then, after a visit to Big Blue and making a few rounds, they will be going to another spot. And I'm not exactly sure where this is yet. And they are planning on having some kind of meeting or ceremony. Now, the ceremony that we witnessed while working with Kara was an elevation ceremony. That was to take those that have put in the time, proven their allegiance to the nation, and things like that, and transfer certain powers to them and elevate them to a sort of no-go-back status, flipping over to the reptilian side versus the human side. The group that was there obviously knew what kind of ceremony this one would be, so they didn't really need to go into explaining it, so I don't have any more details on that. At least not yet. But all of this was great stuff. We get done listening to all of that, and it was a wow, and then Jagger walks in. And what he says is something we didn't expect. Frankie also tailed a car to that location. He tells us that 2 more cars showed up at the apartment complex. More sunglasses, long coats, the works. And out of Frankie's car came a female. White blonde hair was flowing out of her scarf, which was also partly covering her face. She had on her large black sunglasses like everybody else, but she couldn't hide it all. Her cheeks under those sunglasses and her wrists when she reached for the car door as she got out. Jagger could see the greens, the yellows, the oranges. They were all shimmering in the night under those lights. She looked like someone important, like someone from the reptilian elite was already here. Okay, so Frankie's still there keeping an eye out, and we have a meeting to prepare for. We just have no idea where it is. We have reptilian elites coming to check on things and get things moving for the future takeover of our planet, although we aren't exactly sure what they have planned to get all of that done. We have a few celebrities taking part in the fun, and we have a mystery reptilian woman who, it seems, has arrived early. Why is she here before the others arrive? Well, the next day when we track them, it turns out they go to Chinatown. And in Chinatown, they all pile into this little red building. And I mean, it's little, but all the shops are unique and inviting. It's got little red paper lights lining the outside, small windows, little plants outside, things like that. And getting a closer look, it looks like it's sort of a cook shop, like where they sell kitchen items and little knickknacks all centered around cooking. Anyway, Jagger goes in to scope it out, and I keep watch from the street, and he flips on his wrist computer and connects me so I can hear what's going on. But he's in and out really fast. I mean, the only thing I hear him asking about is a set of bowls. He looks around for a little bit, and then he turns around and leaves. I didn't see anyone else come out, so, I'm wondering, what's up. But he comes over and tells me that they pulled an A-list, meaning that like when we were tracking Kara's husband in that other vlog, who's an A-list actor, he just disappeared after entering into a bar restaurant, and we later found out that they were going down under to a ceremony chamber where they were planning that elevation ceremony. And these tunnels where the lizard people are, they're all underground. So this is pretty much common knowledge, but let's think about where they are in LA so we can kind of relate to it above ground. Shaped like a lizard, these tunnels, this underground city, had the tail down by the Central Library, and then the head stretched up to Elysian Park. But before you reach the end up there, you have Chinatown, where we were when we seemed to lose these guys in that little shop. So this is all still within the area on the map. We can't just follow them in, though, without knowing about this place and what they're doing, so we just have to wait. And after they come back out, after the shop closes and things are quiet, we go for it. And the break-in is pretty smooth. While we waited for whatever they were doing, we called on Frankie and Scarlett to help us out too, and they bring supplies. Okay, so inside the shop, there's pans, baking supplies, little statues and lights. It was a super cool shop actually, but we needed to find our hole. Where were these guys going? So we find the back supply room, but we also find a wall that slides open. You wouldn't even notice it at first. There's a small room there with a couple of old cash registers and some other things that looks like they're just saving. It's a little dusty, but behind this shelf full of jars, we find a black door. We open it, and the space behind it is bigger than what you'd think. You'd think you'd be finding a little closet or something, but there's more to that room than you would have thought. And there's a control box on the back wall. So we break out some of our equipment and we bypass that code, and then we pile in and we hit the clearly marked go button, and the floor starts to move and we're being lowered down. It's like an elevator, but sort of more like a dumbwaiter. And when we get down there, we're pretty shocked. Unlike the last lizard tunnel exploration we were on, which looked like it'd been there a while, it was old, it was made of stone. This was more modern and actually looked like a miniature subway with miniature cars that, aside from some framing, were made of glass, so you could see in and out of them. I mean, they weren't tiny, like too small for people. They could actually fit some pretty good-sized people, but it was just a small setup. 2 sets of 2 cars, and each car had enough seats for about 12 people, I think it was. And the first car in each set was run by what looked like a one-person driver in the front. So anyway, not what we expected to find down there. Well, we do what we are there to do, and that's figure out what all's going on here. So we figure out the cars, which are pretty self-explanatory, and get the thing moving, and our ride begins. And it doesn't take too long, several minutes, before we realize that we're actually heading down. And I should also note that this tunnel, this was pretty organized. It was cement, clean, and it actually marked what was going on above ground. The other tunnels didn't do that, but during this ride, we could see, for instance, that we were under Pasadena or going by Pasadena. And then finally, we were getting to the Angeles National Forest. And I thought that was smart because you knew where you were in the city, even if you were down below. Made sense. Anyway, we're going down, and the walls on either side of the train become more decorated with colored designs and stones and things like that. Looks like there's only one destination here. There's no side tunnels or anything like that. Looks like it's a one-way in, one-way out sort of place. So the track then starts to level off again, and the train slows down and then stops. And you can see from the car, and then we get out, but you can see the room that we're in, and it's beautiful. We start to walk around and check it out. It's very large. There's a big podium area in the front. There are lots of seats, and they're all lined with blue velvet and trimmed out in gold. I mean, this was something. It reminded us of the Scientology buildings quite a bit with how they're decorated. With the other ceremony we witnessed, that room was more of an ancient structure compared to this. This was updated, decorated, and you could tell it was meant for something important. Okay, so we get in, and then we start to scope things out. We find small pamphlets next to every seat that talk about the merge, the benefits, what to look forward to, how it will make this world the perfect place, things like that. We then check out the podium, and underneath where someone might put their speech or notes is a small shelf, and on it is a blue metal box. We pull that out and open it up and check out what's inside, and we see a few things. There's a very long list. Some of the names we see we can remember from the last list that they had put together for that elevation ceremony. We find a schedule. We find a written out purpose and a list of goals. They have numbers and stats relating to the merge. And on the very last page, we find what seems to be a type of bio. There's a picture of a woman on it, well, a female reptilian. And Frankie tells me it's the same female reptilian that he witnessed that day. So we read what's put together below her photo, and we learn that she is the head of some reptilian council. I mean, this lady lizard looked big time. So we're doing that, and meanwhile, behind the podium, there's this long stone bench, and it was covered by this red cloth. But underneath it, Frankie finds 3 briefcases. And I call them briefcases because that's the closest thing to what they looked like, but they weren't exactly the traditional briefcase you'd think of. They were metal boxes again, and they all had gold trim and gold handles. They were not locked, and so, of course, we broke into each one of them, and we find them filled with folders and more information, pictures of different celebrities, pictures of some people I'd love to mention but can't, that are pretty high up in our world, and pictures of different reptilians. Now, we can't spend too much time on all of that at that moment because we don't really want to stay down there very long, but we do make the decision to take those briefcases and the pamphlets and the information that we find. By doing so, we know, though, that someone will find out we were down there if they go down there. So we have to move very quickly from this point on. So we get out of there, we close everything up, we get back to where we're staying. The next day, Jagger's back in the office. Jagger's watching for any movement in Chinatown. Frankie is scoping out a few different areas, including the big blue building, the apartments, where the church leader was staying, places like that. And when I get up, I find out that I have a notice from Thatcher, and he tells me that he would like to hook up at noon. So he's actually in LA, and we'll meet in person, so that's great. But before I meet Thatcher, and with everyone else off doing their thing, I call on someone else that I know, a contact of mine who knows the city and the area quite well. He's a seismologist who helps to keep track of potential earthquakes and other dangers along the California coast. And I want to talk to him to see if he knows anything about this area, because the area we discovered the previous night is not on any map I've seen, not to mention the fact that it's all newer construction. So while the world has been focused on a map that was, of these lizard tunnels that was drawn up, in 1933, stuff has been happening underground. This area is new. It's big. There's only one way in and one way out. And the fact that there is only one way in and out is actually good for us because it's less to have to take care of to make sure this meeting or event doesn't happen. They've clearly expanded their tunnels. And I need to know what's happening with the earth in that area and any potential dangers. And hopefully my guy can tell me something. So I go to an office that he has there in the city, and we talk behind closed doors. The meeting takes about an hour, but I come out with some great information. With no immediate earthquake dangers or other threats like that in that particular area at this time, I can now work on how to take down this place, at least temporarily. The information that he had on this area did show that there's water there. He was actually pretty amazed that they hadn't tapped into it already, but this might make for a good opportunity for us. If we can open up that aquifer, we can take down that room. It will flood it. It will flood everything, and it will block the entrance into it. Now, We're not there to take lives. Let's just note that. So we need to make sure that we get this done before people really start to move into this place for this event. How these people are handled directly or indirectly is more in the hands of Thatcher and the people that he works with. Both the Reptilian Nation and our own leaders that are well aware of all of this and are working on all of this situation, they know about each other. What they have going on currently, what their particular wars are between each other, is not my business. Like any job, there's always more to know. I mean, you can be there longer and get in deeper, but we're there to do a job, and I intend to complete the mission and not ask too many questions or put myself further into the situation where I don't belong. When I meet up with Thatcher, it's in the apartment where we're staying. I have the metal briefcases, I have the pamphlets, I have the images of this large meeting place, the trains, and I transfer all of that to him because I don't keep those pictures. This is not information I need to hold for any reason. I've gathered it for him specifically. He's pretty amazed at what we found, and he informs me that not only is this woman lizard leader the head of a council, she's at the head. As would be our president, she has been put in charge of the well-being and the future direction of the Reptilian Nation. That's pretty amazing. I mean, I would love to know more about her. And I mean, it's too bad that instead we're going to ruin all of her plans. But getting an update from Jagger at that time, he tells me that there's been no activity in Chinatown. We will keep watch, and it will actually be better if no one went there because we don't want them to find out that we've taken any items. We don't want anything else to come up. I check in with Scarlett, and it turns out that our lizard leader has been in closed-door meetings at the center the entire morning. And unfortunately, Scarlett isn't a part of the crew working that meeting that day, so she didn't have an opportunity to put in any sort of monitoring devices, but she'll stay there, though, if for no other reason than to let us know when this group breaks apart and where everyone goes. So Thatcher and I go over the items in the briefcases that we pulled from the underground meeting space. They're lined up in the dining room on the table we have there. And I don't start digging through anything more because this is really Thatcher's thing. And I leave him to do what he needs to do. And I sort of step over by the windows and I kind of try to stay out of his way. And I can hear him mumbling and sighing. I hear sounds of amazement and disgust. And after a while of this, he calls me over and he hands me a small booklet and he tells me to turn to page 45. And when I do, I see the title of Full Mission. So I look to Thatcher, but he just tells me to go ahead and continue. And so I read on. And here's some things that were in there. It describes the main purpose of this as the merge. It describes a planet found by chance, that's us, by the way, that is now a valuable quest. It also describes what their goals are not, and that includes wiping out the human race, although there were some notes on population control, which is a little bit disturbing. It describes humans as an asset to the planet, but more on the level of, gophers and moles and workers. It also says, though, and this is an actual compliment, that we are good researchers and our drive to move forward is strong. And so they want us, or some of us rather, to continue on with what we do because we just might discover things that they might miss. I also read that we are to be a planet of not just one species, but two. And two species not living separately, but as one. One blended, more efficient, stronger, faster, more advanced species. And that's just now, because then they go into some talk about, in the end, should this be successful, that they would bring others. Others would come and that the merge would continue. Continuing on to perfect a species, become the best it could be by bringing others together. I mean, basically, guys, what I was reading was saying that should this merge go well, and they expect it to, they could bring other species here and blend us even further. Who knows? In how many years after this thing would get started, we could be something we don't even recognize. And Thatcher's watching me as I read and take in this information. He sees when I've finished, and all he says is that they must be stopped. And this cannot happen if we want to survive. He wants to stop this meeting, this ceremony, so they can continue to do their thing and fight in a way that maintains the existence and integrity of the human race. Well, I'm all for that. But what is this meeting that they're trying to have? What are they trying to accomplish during this visit? And for that, he tells me to turn to page 89 in this thing. This section is all about the upcoming ceremony. Not only will there be their group of A-list actors there are also other influential positions being covered here. I learned that yes, this is a type of elevation ceremony, but it's more extreme than what they were set up to do the last time. The people that will be attending are in big positions of influence over all of us as people. Whether it be to entertain us and woo us, make laws, help control the direction of the younger generations. After going through the elevation piece of the ceremony, which in this case, it looks like they're going to do a more sped up version than they were going to do the last time, they will then have everything prepared, and these selected subjects will take in the powers at that level of the reptilians and start to flip to the side of the lizard. And from that point on, it will be harder for them to feel or see themselves as human. Then they will more rapidly go through a phase 2 of all of this. Something that would not happen for normally a newly elevated person until much farther down the road, but instead now they're just doing it all at one time. Once these people get through that, they will be taken in waves to finish the process. They will spend time only with reptilians, fully immersed in who they are and what they do, and by the time they get back, the person they used to know themselves to be will no longer exist. However, their influences over us as people will remain the same. They will have the same face or front. They will eat the same foods. They will have the same hobbies. They'll tell the same jokes. To us, they'll be the same, but their power over us will be much more fierce. Let's face it, the idea of sharing the planet is already a little bit uncomfortable, but actually blending the people with another species just doesn't seem like something we should do. And according to Thatcher, it's something we're not going to let happen, at least not yet. We need to get to work. I get an update from Scarlett, who let us know that the reptilian leader, the leader of the church, and about 5 others are about to take a trip on a private jet, and word is they're heading to Washington, D.C. So getting that information, Thatcher's on his computer, and he's getting phone calls. This is his department. It's time for he and I to split up. And he's very serious as he says his goodbyes, at least for now. His last words are that there can be no exceptions. Clearly, I can see the importance of all of this. So while Thatcher tracks down what's going on in Washington, me and my team, pull together the supplies we have on hand. And while the rest of the team gets caught up on what I already know, what Thatcher and I reviewed, I head out to pick up the other supplies that we're going to need to close down this meeting that's supposed to happen. Thatcher will keep us updated on if our group of travelers gets on a plane to return to LA. And in the meantime, we just continue with our thing. We're back in Chinatown at midnight. Scarlett and Jagger stay up top to keep an eye on things while Frankie and I go inside, through the black door, and we lower ourselves into the tunnels. We get on the train, and in we go, and off we go, stopping it right as the track starts to dip down. Now, I met with one of my on-the-ground USA defense contacts, and I got exactly what I needed for this job, and we're about to use it. We will be using military-grade C4 explosives, and I have everything that we need in my backpack. By doing this, we'll crack through the aquifer, which in turn will flood this place. There will be no meeting here. They will, however, eventually know that their security has been breached. They will have to postpone this event, and at that time, Thatcher will then step in with his team and do whatever it is he needs to do. Okay, so Frankie and I get busy sticking the blasted caps in the C4. And we get everything set up. We hook it all up to a timer. We will not be sticking around for the blast. When that's set, we get back on the train and we head out. We notify Jagger and Scarlett that everything's set, and we stay inside this china shop until we hear the very loud but muffled boom of what just happened. The explosives were set in enough that the first part of the tunnel shouldn't be damaged, or not too damaged. And Frankie and I go down there to check it all out after everything settles. Some of it's been affected, but it's not too bad. As you start to hike down the tracks, you can see that the water levels are rising, so it worked. And for that day, we're done here. We will only have one more step to complete this mission, and that is to make sure that the Reptilian Nation is unable to work in this space and that their meeting doesn't happen. So we leave, and it's not until the next evening that we're notified that the jet plane returns with our travelers. And everyone gets out, and there are 3 black limousines waiting for them, including our female leader and the church leader. And now we're staking out our china shop, of course. And sure enough, those limos arrive. I'd say it's about 11 o'clock at night, right about then. Now, Frankie and Scarlett stay outside. And they keep watch, and they stay in touch with Jagger and I, who are on the inside. And we're down by the trains, and it's a mess. I mean, the water is higher now. It's about as high as it will go in this spot because it's higher up. But still, it's up to our knees about. And we're hiding behind the trains. Anyway, our woman lizard leader is led by 2 gentlemen, and she goes in and down, and it's the moment we've been waiting for. What will she do? Well, not anything we could have predicted, apparently. She sees everything. She takes off her jacket and hands it to one of the men standing next to her, and she reaches down and touches the water. And I mean, everyone's just horrified by what they see, right? But she's down there touching the water, and her sleeves only go to like her elbows. And the minute she does touch that water, the colors in her arms light up. I mean, the greens are glowing, and the yellows and oranges get brighter. Then she reaches up and she takes off her glasses, and her face is green, and I mean totally green, with a few hints of colors. But by touching the water, it was like she stuck her finger into an electric socket or something, because she lit up everywhere. It might have been a really cool moment, and someone just watching might even have thought this was a cool or good moment. But the very loud scream and howl she let out next would not be mistaken for anything but anger and frustration. When she's done getting that out, she looks to one of the guys next to her, and he seems to know what she means. He nods, and he gets on some kind of radio and gives an update that everything's canceled and to wait for future orders and direction. Then our lady lizard puts on her coat, puts on her glasses, and the 2 men escort her back to the top. We soon follow, and we're in just enough time to see her getting into one of the limos, and then all 3 of those limos drive away. And while we're watching them drive off, we see 2 more cars come out of the darkness. They're not limousines, but they're dark cars with tinted windows. And Jagger and I, we're now just standing in front of the china shop. They drive by us extremely slowly. Then, as the second car goes by, the back window starts to roll down, and I see it's Thatcher. He puts his 2 fingers to his forehead as if tapping a hat, and then he nods at me. The car keeps moving, and then the window goes back up, and then both the cars, they just drive off, following the limos. So he's off to do his thing. Well, we know now that they cannot meet here. This will be a very hard area to even clear out, if it's even possible. Most likely it's not even worth trying. They're going to need a new plan. Their briefcases are missing, and the secrets of their sped-up plan are out. And they're going to know it. They will have to regroup, make new plans, and figure out their next steps. And while they're doing that, Thatcher and his crew will be following them and doing whatever all it is necessary that they do to keep track of them and stay one step ahead of them. So we then return to our apartment. I find that the funds from Thatcher had been transferred. He had taken all the briefcases and information that we looked at there, and he left me a note. And I'm not really going to say here out loud what was in that note that he left me that day, but safe to say, this mission continues. I mean, until there's some resolve, it's going to stay a who is one step ahead of who situation. For some, this job could probably have seemed very intimidating, invasive, and threatening, but in all reality, we're not alone in this universe. Shouldn't be all that surprising. And some more real news is that we're not alone on this planet. We are our own species, and it's all we can do is to fight for our existence. The fight continues and will most likely always continue until if and when someone ever comes out a winner. And that was my job. If to do nothing else than to stall, postpone this big visit, put a stop to a very aggressive plan that would change who we are and wipe us out as we know ourselves to be. The reptilian nation isn't going anywhere, but neither is our fight. We can all take some solace in at least that. Wouldn't it be great if when you saw an issue, or something was bothering you, you could just take care of it right then and there. But it doesn't always work out that way, does it? Something I'm sure we all can't stand are those nagging issues that just will not go away. It's irritating. But what if it was more than irritating? What if it was something to be aware of? Something really serious, a looming threat, a constant on your mind, and not a new one that's always been there. You feel close to it in a way, but you just can't take it down. It would go beyond irritating and could enter a level of maddening. When I am called into this job, it's not something new. It's an old issue that unfortunately those of us that have dealt with it are all too familiar with. They call me the Ghost. I was an agent for the CIA, but today I'm an independent operative working on the side of the mysterious and unbelievable. And today is the story of a fight that continues and a threat that continues to grow. Take a listen and enjoy. With the work I do, I meet a lot of different people. Although most I only know while I'm on a certain job, there are some that I stay in contact with. And I'm just talking about the requesters here. It's very rare that I would actually stay in contact with anyone beyond that, although I do check in with them sometimes after a job is done. This job came to me from one of my networked contacts, a requester that asked for my services on another job having to do with all of this. This being those beings that we hear about in conspiracy theories, stories, and other tales. But those are just stories. This was a job. And I'm going to tell you guys right from the get-go here that there was a lot to this job. And I'm going to do my best to fit in as much as I can in our normal time. These beings that are on a never-ending quest to take over what we have built, they are, in their natural form, taller. They're coloring a mix of greens. They're covered in scales, usually portrayed with colored eyes and tails. For this story today, I'm going to refer to them as a group, as the Lounge, since when in a group, that is how you would refer to them. This is not my first job dealing with them, although all we've been able to do so far is keep them at bay, stop what we can from moving forward. And this has happened more than once. Each time, they take it up a notch. I guess waiting and working on this for thousands of years can make you a bit antsy. But okay, I am contacted by Thatcher, and you might have heard of him before. If not, he's a man I've worked with before on this very subject. He's a part of a group that looks out for and investigates potential threats to our world, and they work to pull together whoever they need and whatever they need that fits the job to get things done. He conveys to me the seriousness, and he doesn't really need to include any details because I know that if I get a request from him, it is a big deal. The team and I are immediately on alert, and once again, I meet him at his private home, like I did the last time, out on the East Coast. Thatcher has seen a world of behind the scenes over and over again. His view of what the world is, how vulnerable it is very different than any average person. And I just have to tell you guys this. You don't get to meet a guy like Thatcher of this caliber, his tenacity, very often. Not everyone will get this chance. But if you want to talk motivation, even the best motivational speaker would have nothing on this guy. If you are around him and work with him, you're going to want to work and work even harder. It makes you appreciate the life you have even more because you learned so much about things going on, and it pushes you to do and be more. Now, this job will be nothing like a motivational retreat or anything, but I'm just saying the guy's pretty incredible. I could only wish, though, that there weren't any problems that were causing him to get a hold of me at that time, but obviously something was going on. The Lounge is fixated on the merge. This was their new and main goal after all these years, a lot of years. They couldn't take us over, because let's face it, we do deserve some credit here. We as a species, a people, a race, however you want to look at it, are no dummies either. Not really. And our fight is pretty good, I have to say. So it became all about the merge, blend with us instead of a full takeover. If you can't beat them, join them sort of mentality. Build a new group of us. There would be them, of course, in their big plan, a lounge of many walking around with us. There would be some of us, still us, how nice of them to let us still exist as we are. And then there would be the mixed breeds, the human hybrids. And those would be the bread elites, the ones above it all, whatever that would look like. We, however, as plain and simple humans, would end up taking a second seat to those guys. Thatcher tells me how much stopping them the last time bought some very good time. The lounge is relentless, though. When our job ended, Thatcher's job continued as he trailed them. Says they were beyond angry that their plans and elevation ceremonies were canceled and destroyed. Those are ceremonies that further immerse their targets into their way of being, physical and otherwise. Thatcher's group refers to the members of the lounge that are on the surface, interacting with us, as the surface dwellers. Those that stay underground and in the catacombs would be the subs, the subterranean. But so that's all okay. But then where is everyone else? Where are the rest of them? Because he knows there are more of them. When the small group of leaders came down the last time, they came from a ship from space. This ship and its permanent crew kept watch on the things happening from up there. And now, although we have beat them at some things, and we can be a strong competition and put up a good fight to them, there are some areas we're not so good, and space travel is one of them. We feel good because we can keep an eye on our enemies here on Earth, right? While other beings are out there watching their enemies and targets from space. And the lounge is one of those groups. They have us beat on that one. And that is how they came to Earth in the first place. Getting to the leaders doing their deeds in Chinatown, which if you don't know is where we ended up putting an end to their operation the last time when we worked with Thatcher. And it was great, but there were others. There were levels of leaders, and Thatcher was convinced that the ones we met were not the ones at the top. The lounge has done a great job so far staying out of the way, keeping things moving, and so they are doing something right. I mean, it's no assumption by anyone that we are dealing with a less than intelligent group or race here. And I already know that some of you might be thinking, hey, look, okay, these guys have been coming around probably longer than we have been around. So what's the problem? Why haven't they taken us over already? Why can't they just come in and do us in right here and now? Well, it's not as easy as that. You have to remember that this is a group that is where they are and have been for centuries and then some. They have sustained and maintained a certain life and means of survival. We're not talking about a few of them on a trip. They have a population. There are a lot of them. And they have leaders, just like we do. It's not every single one of them that thinks they're just going to walk into our world, come up to the surface, and take over anyone and everyone they see. The way Thatcher has come to see it is that it's always been a mission. But it's not talked about with every single member of that population every single day. There may be a lot of them, but it's not like they're all standing by to pounce. Then there's the question, well, why didn't they just take us out a long time ago? Someone asked that. When we didn't have all the weapons that we do now and things like that. And this is a great question because it would have been easy, wouldn't it? Sounds like it would. But we did survive many things back in those days. It's not like we were just sitting ducks hanging around on the farm all day. We as people did know how to fight back. We have our own wars and battles to show for that. Some of us lost. And some of those stories get lost in our legends and folklore, like so much of everything does. Again, they would be dealing with our leaders and the people they need to get past. Well, they tried that and failed. Hence, their new approach of infecting our population. In our historical studies, even before those days for us, we see them depicted on cave walls and other art. The challenge has been here for a long time. And over that time, their approach has morphed and changed. And they learned more about us. And we were constantly growing and changing. They had to keep up with that as well. If you didn't hear the other stories, just know that this all started out with them wanting to make a place for themselves here, having just escaped the dangers of their own home. It's not like they hit the ground ready for battle. And we apparently worshipped them for quite a while. So why would they want to mess with that? And then it all just continues. Today and for a while now, they no longer want our worship or to take us over. They feel they can get more out of it, blend and create a new, almost noble group to run the planet. And if they couldn't get to our leaders, then why not work their way into the people? I mean, can I explain it all? No, I cannot. If I could just sit down and chat with them for a good solid week or something, maybe I could get their full history and explanation. But that's not really going to happen. We can only put together what we can from the information that we get. Anyway, that's why they're working in the hot spots like LA and Washington. And they've changed too along the way, by the way. I think it was even in the last video that I did, or sometime very recently, I talk about how we assume that just because a type of being comes from somewhere else, they are perfect. Obviously, they're smarter than us, and all their stuff is just cool. For them to just walk onto Earth and take over everything would mean that you are assuming that they were capable of doing so simply because they came from somewhere else. It might surprise you, but we are also a challenge. A lot of the time I will hear people talking, or I'll read things that are going around, and people discuss how the human race is somehow below everything else. It's not as smart, not as capable. And that is simply not true. There are some things we are ahead in, and some things we are behind in. We learned a lot about a lot of that stuff from Phoenix and those alien partners that have helped us just as much as we've helped them on certain things. Just because the lounge could get here doesn't mean they know all about it or the best way to get to us. We weren't even a target for them in the beginning. Earth itself was never really a goal. They were fine where they were, but the situation didn't work out, so they found themselves here. It was an escape that landed them here. They would have to acclimate, adapt, find a home, build a presence, and that all takes work and time. And I'm not sure about you, but I feel very confident that if there was some sort of alien presence here that wanted to take over everything and had the absolute capability of doing so, it would have happened by now. So that tells us that we still have a chance. Now, back to these guys. We know about the caves and catacombs, and those things sound and seem obvious. They've also tracked some rogue members living and moving about in some of our city's oldest tunnels and things like that. And although we've looked at different islands and places off the grid, we never have found their home base. But that's changed, Thatcher says. And then he just comes out with it. He says they are in the Western Pacific. And then in a louder voice, he says that they are deep down in the Mariana Trench. We're sitting there talking at his desk in his study in his house, and he gets up and he starts talking about how brilliant it all is. Of course, he says, they're hiding right in front of us, yet somewhere we are not, a place we never really see. We have had people go down into the Mariana Trench and they have found interesting things. Think 1960, and then think 2012 and James Cameron. You know him. He's the guy that you can thank for movies like Avatar, and The Abyss, and Titanic. He wanted the adventure, says he's an explorer, and he had the money. Not everyone will get that chance to go down there. It's deeper than Mount Everest is tall. The thing is enormous. So Thatcher's telling me all of this, and I'm hearing all of this, and I don't even ask any questions at this point. I'm not sure I even want to know what's coming next. But sure enough, he validates my assuming thoughts. He tells me that this mission not only has to do with the lounge invading our world, it will involve us going into their territory. And yes, that means traveling down into the Mariana Trench. I've traveled to far-off places before, really far, but somehow going down deep into the Mariana Trench is not something I really had on my bucket list, okay? It's kind of funny because I've dealt with the lounge before, and I can believe that they exist and all of that. But what I'm questioning in my mind at that moment is how we're going to actually get down there and be able to figure anything out, be down there long enough and move around. Thatcher can see the questions all over my face, and he tells me that they've already made headway in all of that. And that's how they actually found them in the first place. During the years that Thatcher had been involved with this, and even before that, and by we here, guys, I mean the people working on this on the side of us. Obviously, we in this case cannot be all of us on this planet. But we have worked to do anything we can to be on these guys, if not ahead of them, at least in line with them to be what's in their way when they're trying to get something done. And we have been very effective. We have been a good roadblock. And then Thatcher starts talking about submarines. And we have subs. You all know this. You can find a lot of information on the submarines that we have. But there are some things that are kept secret. Even Cameron worked with engineers in secret on his sub. And it was the same for Thatcher and his crew. They have worked on this for 6 years, building the perfect vessel to follow where they believe this population resides, which is unbelievably located in the depths of the Mariana Trench. He tells me that although their sub has not been sent down with anyone actually on it, they have tested it unmanned. They also have some photos and footage from those trips. So there we are. And unless this turns out to be something that just cannot be done, I always take the jobs that Thatcher comes to me for. They are dealing with our world, and anything with that, to me, is worth protecting. Thatcher and I talk for a while longer, and then it's time to get going. I call into the warehouse, and it will be the entire team that will meet with us. In order for us to get a grip on what all of this is, we need to go to where Thatcher's base is for this project, where they work out of on all of this. I can't divulge our exact location, but you can look on a map if you don't know where the deepest known place on Earth is, the Mariana Trench. We're headed over by Guam and the Mariana Islands, and that's enough about that. But anyway, it's not like we can just zip over there and be there in the morning. We have prep to do. It takes some time. Thatcher's team is standing by. They're ready for us whenever we get there. And when we do, we're welcomed and we're impressed. We walked into a very fine-tuned operation. There was a lot going on. The base that we were at is on the water, clearly. We've got ships, different piers, aircraft carriers, hangars, the works. We end up meeting with about a dozen people. Thatcher stands at the end of the table addressing the group, but really us. Without going into all the details of his many travels tracking down the lounge members and where they go after a visit, he tells us what they discovered. And these aren't the ones here that are on the surface permanently, pretty much. The ones that are working with us, interacting with us, trying to merge with us. Thatcher knows where they are. For this, he's referring to the lounge members that come in every now and then to check on how things are going, have meetings, things like that. Remember, he's looking for the ones in charge, not those sent in to do work a little bit at a time. He is able to track the visitors, and he tells us that it led him to the ocean, specifically the Western Pacific. And at first, it was a little bit confusing. Surely they didn't have an entire population spread out over the sea in different ships or something hiding out. But at first, it sort of seemed like that's what it could be. After catching on to their sea travels, though, Thatcher's group was able to lock onto them, and his group followed the lounge higher-ups. Well, the ship they followed did not go to meet other ships. It did not go to an island. It didn't go anywhere, technically. It just went out to the middle of nowhere, and it sat there for a while. The team knew where they were. They were directly over the Mariana Trench, but who would think that really that would have to do with anything? And they were aware of it, but their first thought certainly wasn't that the lounge and the trench were connected. Thatcher's team stayed out of the way, but kept an eye on them. As more hours ticked by, they almost started to think that maybe there was nothing that was going to happen. Maybe this is where they went to have other meetings where no one else would be around or something like that. But then this large black vessel surfaced. This vessel came out of nowhere. There was nothing around. It just came up out of the water. It was all black with yellow lights flashing. It was right next to the ship that they were watching. And then some sort of upper hatch opened, and the lounge members that the team was tracking dropped into this black vessel, and minutes later, it was gone. The ship that they traveled on to get to this location takes off. It goes back in the direction from which it came. With them out of the way, Thatcher's team then moves in and tries to find this black vessel using their advanced radar and sonar capabilities, anything they have. They do end up finding it, but as soon as they do, they then watched it disappear right before their eyes into the depths. They were almost in shock. Where was this thing going? Maybe there were a ton of little vessels, just enough under the surface that they could hide. Maybe that was it. They were working on a sub that could go anywhere in the ocean. They just didn't know that they would use it for this right then, but they thought it would be the perfect time to test it. They would send it down unmanned, set up the cameras and things just to see if they could try to find anything down there and try to find where this vessel went. The long torpedo sub was set up with cameras all around it, and they would send it down as far as they had to until they found something. Thatcher then breaks out the footage and images from his trip that they were able to capture. He had a large folder full of photographs, but first he breaks out some video. With the cameras able to go off in all different directions, like I said, they were on tethers, he really did get some great stuff, and we were floored by what we saw. There were black metal structures that almost seemed like they were floating. It was a little hard to get a good view of what it would be like to be there since we were looking through the camera's eyes. But we saw the structures, and they were together in a group, but they were all separated from each other, and they were lit up with colored lights. There was no life that we saw of any kind swimming around, just these what looked like floating structures. There were tall ones, round ones shaped like cones. We go through a few of those videos, and then on one of them, Thatcher stops the play, and he points out some lights in the bottom right corner of the frame. And you wouldn't notice it at first as something different, and it's not like this footage is perfectly clear either. But when he points it out, sure enough, there is a big group of these lights. He makes sure we see it, and then he goes and lets the video play a bit further. Then he stops it again and points out this smaller black moving object. He backs that up with a photo of that black object blown up and enhanced. And it looks like a vessel of some kind. It's black, and it's lined with yellow lights going along the side. This is the vessel his team saw above, the one that disappeared into the depths that they lost track of. Does Thatcher have proof? No, he does not. But what else would it be? He's certain that the lounge leaders were on that vessel and that this place down in the Mariana Trench is where they are, where all of them are. He sets the photographs down and turns off the video and addresses me and the team, tells us that he has come to us because he needs to send someone down there to check out what it all is. We would need to track the path of where that vessel went and where the passengers of it went. They were not out floating around or anything, so where are they? He believes that that wall of lights that we saw in the small corner of the frame means something and is something. And because this is an over-the-top secret mission, he can't send anyone that's a part of his crew. Anyone and everyone, military or otherwise, is accounted for. And because this mission is one that has to happen yet will never have happened, they need a crew that can go in that will not be missed or raise suspicions. He knows we've done deep dives before, but he also knows that this one is extreme. And we as a team, we're looking at each other. We're deep in thought, yet our thoughts are moving extremely fast. Then we just start nodding to each other. This job has to happen. There are always risks. And I trust Thatcher, and so does the team. The biggest thing here is that they haven't set anyone down in their sub. It hasn't had anyone on it. We would be the first. But the way we see it, someone has to be the first, so why not it be us? My first question is, though, how many of us would be able to go? It's one of Thatcher's team members who speaks up to that one, says he's one of the sub's designers and explains that the sub was built for two. They're not into solo missions, especially not the ones that this is now being designed for. He tells us that we could fit three, but we would have to be extremely creative in getting in there, and we'd have to be willing to be stuck in our cramped position for almost 90 minutes. He stressed cramped. And getting that tour of the main sub, which they call the burrow, we learn that the pilot's chamber is very small. It's not big at all. If I want to cram in as many people as I can. They also have a round travel sub, and they've named that the Mini because it's a mini in size compared to the burrow. We would use this to move about once we get down to where we're going. It would use power from the burrow until we were ready to attach, at which point we would boost the Mini. Then we'd only have about 6 hours, which was a lot actually, considering where we would be. And Thatcher timed all of this so that it would line up with an expected return trip by the lounge. If they stuck to their pattern, they would be sending the black vessel back anytime. For us, there's no way that we're going to be able to fit in 4 people in the pilot's chamber. But after we try again, we come up with a way to fit Frankie, myself, and Jagger in that chamber. And yes, we had to be very creative. It's extremely tight. We will not be able to move. We will be in cramped positions the entire time. We can't stretch out. We can't move our arms. We'll all be intertwined. Our legs will be bent. I mean, if you're claustrophobic, this mission is not for you. When we get into the Mini, when we get down there, we will have more room. It's bigger, and one entire side of it is made of glass, so that will also give us a better view into what's around us. We have 6 cameras attached to the Mini, and we have 6 more attached to the burrow. All cameras can be sent out on tethers to capture images and footage of what we find down there. The plan? Send us down on a parallel path to the lounge and follow them to wherever they're going. And it's time, and with everything set and all the details gone over, Frankie, Jagger, and I pile into the pilot's chamber. The next 90 minutes or so seem to take forever. And to give you an idea, nuclear subs are somewhere around 800 feet. The deepest recorded divers, somewhere over 1,000 feet. We were past the depth of even where the Titanic finally laid to rest, which is just over 12,000 feet. Our final depth was 23,080 feet. And if you've seen pictures of the Mariana Trench, you know that it is wider at the top smaller at the bottom, an upside down pyramid shape. And when we hit the rock, we would be just below where their setup is. That's how it was set up. We would have to work fast and then catch up to where the black vessel is. So we'd end up backtracking after we landed. So we get down there and we landed hard. And being in that small chamber and hitting the bottom like we did, it wasn't great. I mean, the three of us all scrunched down onto each other. But even though we were so deep, it somehow felt good to have the earth under us again, to feel that, even though we were surrounded by water everywhere else. And there was no wasting time. We were cramped. We didn't waste even a minute. And we also had to stick to our target. We opened up the hatch. We loaded up ourselves and our supplies. And then once that's closed, we could engage its power, which basically inhales a large power boost from the burrow. And it's limited on how long that power will last, which means we are limited on time as well. We set our timers that Thatcher's team gave us so that we could keep track of how long we were out and about. And we're moving fast, but we also can't help but notice where we are. And let me tell you, underwater like that, you feel like a speck of dust in a giant museum of things you've never seen before. We were tiny in comparison to our surroundings, and we felt like we were tiny. We move our way up in the Mini, up the rock wall, and in not that long, we do see the lights. They're the same lights that we saw in the videos, multicolored. And as we get closer, we see the black structures. They each seem to have stilts that connect them to the rock incline of the wall below them. And as we came upon all of that, it was this weird sense that came over all of us of awe and calm. But what were these structures? It was a bit mesmerizing as we quietly floated past these things. And like all things, they were much bigger when you get up close. They looked solid. They looked strong, thick. We didn't see any doors or openings. It was like moving through a metal forest. And then we saw it, the wall of lights that was only caught on that one part of that one piece of film. We head that way, staying low and making sure that we don't go above any of the stilts. And that's when our communication with the surface goes out, which was great. I mean, we were trying to log where we were going and we had reception, but then it just cut out. So now it's really quiet, except for the three of us. Well, we spot the black vessel, and it's still moving along, which is great for us because that means that they're not inside yet. We didn't miss them. And now the Mini was set up to suction on to this black vessel. And getting closer to it, it became obvious how small we were in compared to it, which is fine because it would help us not get noticed. As far as time goes, it took us about 7 minutes to get from our landing point to where they were. Following procedure again, we stay directly underneath the black vessel and we rise until we meet it. And hitching a ride, we approach that large lighted wall. It's lined with blue, yellow, and green lights, and it appears to be made out of some kind of metal, just like the other structures. We get closer and closer to it until part of the wall slides open. We float on in and the wall slides closed behind us. The area we're in is filled with water, but the water doesn't go all the way to the top. And the black vessel rises to the top of that. And that's about all we know at that point. I can't see directly above ourselves. We can only see a little bit in front of ourselves, which isn't really anything. So we wait until we see the 4 members exit the vessel above us. And at this point, we're not exactly sure what to do exactly. We're unfamiliar with this area and any of their patterns or behavior down here. So we just wait until we actually see them go inside this large building and we hear the large boom of the door closing behind them. At that point, we detach from their vessel and we also rise to the surface. We place ourselves as far back and away from them as we can get. And then we too unload. These guys are not fish. They didn't just get out and start swimming around. This place is sophisticated. And we have oxygen masks on that Thatcher's team gave us. But after getting to the top and seeing what this place is, watching them walk around it, Frankie takes a chance and removes his, confirming that they have this place set up with air to breathe. And they would only have that set up if they needed it. So that tells us that they are also vulnerable down here. This is their territory, but they're not all powerful. Anyway, we follow the path that we saw them take. And there are 4 levels of sealed doors to get through, but there are no locks. I mean, no one else would ever be down there, so apparently they don't need those. Anyway, we're able to walk right in. We go slowly through so as to not be seen or heard. We don't need that door slamming behind us either. And when we got through that door, it was crazy. We found ourselves looking at a city that made us feel like we had walked into the future. and it was endless. And it wasn't a city like we would see here on the surface of Earth. It was more black buildings, all colored with little lights everywhere. It was kind of beautiful, but it was also kind of disturbing at the same time, because what was weird about it is that we were here on Earth, but we're looking at things that are not from Earth. I mean, if you had just woken up there, you would be convinced that you were somewhere else. They built this here. Getting pushed off the land with our population only growing, they found themselves a great hiding place, and they built a world in which they could live. Pretty incredible, actually. Well, we get in just in time to see what direction the lounge is headed. And they didn't just start walking through the place on the ground. They had this small platform, and it had a stand with controls. Anyway, they all got on it. They get on this thing, and they start moving. This thing was like a big metal magic carpet with a controller. And all we could do is follow on foot. So we're kind of rushing at this point. And getting up close to the buildings that are in this place, again, you really get to see how big they are. The colored lights that seemed small, that were speckled all over the buildings, you get up to them and they're huge. The buildings are huge. And getting down into it, we see that some of the buildings are connected by walkways. And although we don't see anyone else walking around outside these buildings, we do see figures inside those walkways. I mean, they have air down here, yet there's no one walking around. Literally no one, except for the lounge leaders that just got here. It's very quiet. And we're just thinking, this is what they set up for themselves. And now they're all inside. I mean, we don't know anything about the place, but it seems like that's what they're doing. So it does seem kind of strange. But anyway, our lounge guys get up to another one of these black buildings, and they go inside. And we don't follow them all the way in, but we see that when they get inside, they go through another door. And we don't follow them through that right away. We take a moment to look around. And when you first walk in, you can see that you're on a ledge, a really big one, but it is a ledge. There are a few small buildings up there, some plants and different things. And we go over to the ledge and look down, and then we see what's going on in this place. It's almost like they built outside on the inside. It's very colorful with greens and blues and pinks, and we see beings. They're all in their true form of green with their scales and their tails, walking around and just doing their thing. Some are busying themselves by this stream. It's like a stream or brook that runs right down the middle of this place. And we hear the water trickling, and we notice that it's coming in through this pipe that's in the wall. But anyway, this place is filled with lounge members. They're going in and out of buildings. They're just walking around. It would appear that they're just living on the inside of this thing. They're just going about their day. I really can't express to you the size of these things. They are very big. It's really like we walked into a whole new world. You can't see the other side of it or anything. Let's put it that way. They have flowers in there, plants in there, and there's lighting. It's all artificial, of course, provided by these large lighted spheres, but everything is neat and clean. And I have to hand it to these guys. This place is crazy. They've done a lot of work down here and brought a lot to an area of our planet that we ourselves can't even seem to get to and stay for really any length of time. And which we're noticing, by the way, at that time, that we're running out of time. So we don't have time to check out all the buildings and walk around and explore, really. But there is an entire world in here. And we were all given little cameras and little recording devices. So we do take some time to get some pictures of what's down there and what's in these buildings. It was pretty incredible. Well, while we're doing all of that, we then hear this popping, swooshing sound, and it's coming from one of these small house-like buildings that's on the ledge and off a little bit a ways from us. We duck behind some of the bushes that are there, and we just wait to see what happens. And this light flashes, and then the front door to this place opens. 3 more lounge members that are all dressed in blue, like a royal blue, step outside of it. The one in front is female. We can't help notice that because when we were in California, it was a woman, a female being, that was in charge. We're starting to wonder if that's just the case for these guys. But anyway, they go through the same door the other lounge members went through. So we will also have to follow. But first, after they go in, we check out the building where we heard those sounds and where they came from. We get inside, and it first seems like there's nothing. I mean, there's no furniture, there are no rooms, there's nothing. It's basically 4 walls, a roof, and a floor. But we do see, however, are some dissolving crystals, these colored crystals swirling just above the floor. And eventually they dissolve into the air and they just disappear. And Jagger was able to quickly catch a picture of that, which was great. We don't know what it is, but we did get it on camera. And so now Frankie will stay where we are right then. He will stay by this house building, and Frankie and I will go through the door the lounge members went through. And when we get through there, it's a whole different story again. This room was very large, and it was black. The walls, the floor, all of it was black. It seems to be their color. And it was dark to boot. Not many lights, really. There weren't any lights on where we were. It looked like a very large space, but it wasn't all lit up, so we couldn't really see what all was going on. There was only one area that had a little bit of light above it. It was kind of far out a ways, so that's where we headed. And when we get over there, and as we get closer to the light, we start to realize what's around us. And we see that the walls are made of glass. I mean, I'm not sure how thick these things were or what they had going on with all of that, but they were made of glass. And we can see it's just ocean on the outside, water all around us. They have little lights above where these glass walls are, so you can see outside. Can't really see on the inside, though. But there's water everywhere. I mean, it made you feel a little bit uneasy, I have to say, because we need air to breathe. And if anything happens to these walls, which doesn't make you feel very good when they're just glass, we could be in a lot of trouble. But we deal with it, though, and we head over to where this small group is. And they're all sitting together at this large round table. The woman in blue is standing, and she addresses the group and then pushes this button on the table, and this large screen comes up out of the table. And then Miss Blue walks over to a stand that's off to the side. It's not really far away, but it's not next to where they're meeting. And it sort of looks like it's computer equipment, although not equipment like we have. And she inserts some sort of crystal key into a slot on this thing, and it's something that she has hanging from her belt. And when she inserts it, and when she pulls it out, images start to appear on that screen above the table. She grabs a tablet-like thing off of that stand and then goes back over to the table where she takes a seat. One of the other members gets up just as she sits down, whispers something in her ear, and she just nods, and then this guy takes off. He heads back out of the room where Jagger is, and we're just hoping that Jagger catches whatever that is. We are there to gather information. We need everything we can get. Right now, at that moment, I am focused on that key that Miss Blue has hanging around her belt. They've now turned their lights down even lower so they can focus on the presentation. And so I just make a quick decision and decide that I'm just going to move in and grab that thing. Frankie stands back a ways, keeping watch. And I get up there, and the member to the right of her was really fidgety. I mean, they wouldn't sit still. So I had a couple of close calls, but then I'm able to just snip this key right off of Miss Blue's belt. We have no idea what it is or what it does, but she's the only one with one, and so it would appear that it might have something important on it, and we want it. And I mean, we're getting information, and we're feeling good about that, but we're not really getting the mother lode that we feel like we should be getting, what we came there for. There's nothing really for us to stop. So, we're looking around, and it starts to feel like we came a very long ways to not get a whole lot. This looks like a very important meeting, however, so there's got to be more we can get from this. And then we hear it. We hear Miss Blue say that what she's showing them illustrates their next phase of action. And that gets our attention. I mean, we were actually about to go back out to the colorful outside world of this place and check that out, but we stopped in our tracks and we waited. The minute she says it's their one and only copy, that really gets me going. Whatever is on this computer tower is something that we need. Miss Blue goes on to tell her group that as soon as they reach their current goals, this new phase will kick in. She says that with the merge underway and taking a stronger hold, they will be ready to start weakening our state and lowering our numbers. Her visuals show, and she explains, that for every one of our members of society, I'm talking about us, the humans here, that is merged with theirs, another one will be taken down and out. And this will double the effect of what they are doing. She goes on to explain that this is a crucial piece of their plan if they ever want a chance to get ahead with the little resources that they have. They need this. And therefore, she's tasking them all to reach their goals and quickly pick up their game. Now, whatever she's talking about doesn't sound good for us, and we need to get the information on what all this is. Somehow, I need to get over to that computer tower. I need to wipe it of all its information, or get all its information. And we don't really have the luxury of time. We don't know how long this meeting is, and we ourselves are running out of time. Now, I have a lot of computer knowledge. I have a lot of different computer equipment and things, but there's nothing I have that's going to work on what they have here. I don't have time to analyze what it is, and I can't just go in and download everything. So Frankie and I's plan is to actually just open up this tower and take what we can. We would work from behind. The tower's off to the side, like I said, and it's out of the light, the little bit of light now that's shining down on their meeting table. So as long as we're quiet, we should be okay. And getting into it was actually no problem. It was what we had to do next that really got the adrenaline pumping. We were going to have to get this thing and gut it, basically. Take what we get and run. This was our only choice. Otherwise, we just leave now without having much. And since that's not really our style, there's nothing else to do but go for it. With Frankie by my side, we signal what parts we're each going to grab. We do a silent 1, 2, 3 count, and then we yank everything out of the tower. And the minute we do, the presentation shuts down. And all that's left is the one light above their circle meeting table. With our stuff in our hands, we get up and we run. And we find Jagger on the other side of the entrance. But we don't even get out of that area. We don't even get to the next door before we hear some kind of call as the meeting room door flies open. And then alarms start going off. We make it through our exit door, and just in time, because right when we get through, that door slams shut and locks. Remember, nothing was locked before. So now we're outside and we're back in the metal city. We're about to start running when we remember the magic carpet. So we throw our stuff down on it, and then we hear more banging behind us. The door to the black building flies open, and we hear the woman in blue calling out to us, telling us to stop. Now, I'm down on the floor of the red carpet, and I'm playing with the buttons. It's foreign to me. There's no on-off. There's no forward-backward, and they're running up to us now. And just as one of them grabs onto the magic carpet, I get it going. Well, Frankie gets into a fight with one of the guys who's trying to grab onto our ride. And the guy's stronger than we would have anticipated, and he actually drags Frankie off of the magic carpet. Well, I'm learning more about the controls as we go, so I'm able to stop us from moving forward. And I stay with the ride and the equipment, and Jagger jumps off to go help Frankie. So now it's 2 guys on 1. And let me tell you, the one guy on their side, he really put up a good fight. These guys are very strong. Well, Jagger starts to yell out for me to go, to get going, and he and Frankie are able to knock down the guy trying to stop us. And now there's even more guys coming after us. I don't question Jagger, though, and I just start going. And Frankie and Jagger start running after me. Jagger's still pushing me to keep going forward, even though, it's kind of hard because your instinct is to stop and let them on. But I do keep going. They're in the position to know best of what they want me to do at this point, since I am the one with the travel vessel. So it's my job to listen to what they need. They do catch up, and so now we're all on our way. But we're not out of the woods. We get back to where the vessels are and that body of water inside that chamber, and I just dive right in. And I go over to the Mini. I get inside as fast as I can, and I'm not thinking about anything else other than getting it started and going back for Jagger and Frankie. By the time I head over there, there are more members of the lounge starting to show up out on that platform. And Jagger and Frankie are backing up, closer to the water. They have all the equipment in their hands. I get there just in time for them to jump in. So now we have the equipment, we have each other. We close the hatch and we take off. And we can only go so fast, but our advantage here is that we are positioned down lower than they are. And this was a great move by Thatcher's team, a great way to set it up, because the lounge will not expect this at first, and it will buy us some time. We expect they'll think that we're somewhere out where they are, not down below where they are. So even if they do see us by the time we're going up and away, we'll be ahead of them. So anyway, we move forward in the Mini and we don't look back. We get back to the burrow, attach ourselves to it. We leave all the equipment inside, and we stuff ourselves down into the burrow. And once we're all packed in, we take off. And now at that point, we only have the cameras outside of the burrow as any sort of view really into what's going on. And Frankie does see some lights off in the distance, but they don't seem to follow us. Did we lose them? We can't be sure, and we'll never be sure. Did they get pictures of us? Will they know who we are later? These are things we can't know. When we get to the surface, Thatcher's team is waiting for us, and we're out of the Mini almost as fast as we popped up out of the water. We get back to base, and it's suddenly familiar. We've had meetings before, of course, but it's exactly what they were doing. We were sent out on our travels to come back with information. And that's exactly what the lounge was doing. Two groups against each other doing exactly the same thing. The equipment we brought back will take a while for their experts to figure out. That's not really for us to know or be concerned with. But from what we learned, what was on there was a plan to take things to another level in trying to get into our world and merge with us. And we relay to Thatcher that we did hear them say it was their only copy. Hopefully that's the case. Next up, we break out the video of the shimmering lights in that strange little house building. And to our surprise, that causes Thatcher even more concern than what's on the equipment at the moment. I can see it on his face. And then we move into the video that Jagger got outside of the black room when that one member left, if you remember. And this raises concerns for all of us, takes it all even further. Through a tiny window in this little house, Jagger was able to capture what happened on the inside. When the one member left, he went straight for that little house, put himself inside of it, and he too had a key of some kind that he inserted into the wall. And within seconds, he was sucked up by those glimmering crystals, and then he disappeared. This tells us only one thing. Not only did they escape their planet and come here to build a city, a hiding place where they can exist while planning their attack on us, there is something else out there. Another somewhere that they exist. What is inside that little house can't be anything else but a portal. But where does it go? Well, we don't know. But after we finish up our meeting at the base, we know one thing. If Thatcher really wants to get the leaders who are heading up this entire thing, someone is going to have to get through that portal. They're just going to have to. And this takes things to a whole new level for all of us. A level we know nothing about, really. What is out there? Where are they going? That's something we can't know for sure. Not this time around, anyway. And that really concluded our job that time with Thatcher in the Mariana Trench. This job took a lot of time and a lot of resources. And for them, it was years in the making just to be able to get down there, only to find that we as a people have even further to go. Somehow, though, starting all of this and going into this, Thatcher and we knew that it wasn't going to be easy. I mean, no one really thought that we were just going to be able to get down there, solve all the issues, figure out all the answers. But this was definitely unexpected. We turned over all of our information, and it was time for us to go. One thing that did make us feel better is that we got a follow-up from Thatcher. 6 months later, they were able to figure out and pull what was on that computer tower, what we pulled out of there. He wouldn't tell me exactly what the plan entailed because he explained that it just doesn't really help anyone to know about it. It only helps if we can solve it. And he wanted us to know that what we did put off this phase 2. What we pulled had the entire architecture of what they planned to do, and it set them back for sure. What we did was not all for naught. Gathering intel like this and figuring out your enemy is never easy. We see that in our own life here on Earth. We think that problems can be solved quickly. If you know there's a problem, go fix it. And we're talking world-sized problems, right? But it really takes a lot of time. Things are delicate, and there are a lot of moving parts. This was no different, and our obstacle is that they are from somewhere else. They are other beings. They don't think like us. They are not us. So all of that has to be figured out as well. Make no mistake, it's a very big deal to go down into the Mariana Trench. And no, we will not get the publicity or fame for doing it. But that's not really why we do anything that we do. There are much bigger issues at hand here. We did get the information and we gained insight into what they were doing, and it proved to us that they're still going strong. But we also learned some other things. These guys are very good with their technology as far as their spaceships and that beautiful city, but they couldn't understand. There's something to the human race. We are not robots. We are all individuals, yet we somehow flow together. The big thing here is that they don't understand the human factor. I can't explain it to anyone. It just is. It is who we are. But them not knowing is their one weakness, them not getting it. They can build gadgets and travel and do that all day long, but they don't understand how to infiltrate us. They are concerned with the merge and are taking it on as if it's just another task to complete. But they underestimate us. Without fully understanding us, they won't ever really know what we're up to or where we're at. And because of this, their goals may never be realized. But they will keep trying. And with every attempt, we will do the best we can to be there to try to stop them. Thank you for listening to this story about this job today. I appreciate you taking the time to be here with me this Friday, this weekend. Like, subscribe, and turn on your notifications if that's your thing. And until next time, and I will talk to you all soon. And okay, that's a wrap. See y'all next time.